Now, if I space out, that's where my line is.
You're safe.
I'm safe now. No, I mean, I was in a night state. Back on again.
Yeah. It's nonstop going on. I feel like after we got some really nice friends and it's like two things. Like
Sunday was.
Grace calls under a house, but yeah.
What many things can I mark? You're gonna have to remember.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. No cheating.
I know.
Should we do that? Just to test everybody to see how they know what happens?
So.
Where did you put it into?
I was almost late. I got sucked into reading all our hate mail.
I know, right? It's pretty, some of it's pretty rough. We got anybody there, Patrick? Not yet. What do we have? Two people attending? Is that what that is? Do we know, or how do we know if they want to make comments or they're just listening? Can they let us know somehow, or is it? Okay, so you'll let me know if they raise their hand. Yeah, okay. No. DP, I don't believe that's David. And he's logged in as a guest, right?
It says Dave's phone, that's why it's showing up DP.
Is that Chris pulling up outside? Yeah, Chris is coming in. We'll just wait a second for him.
Hey, David, if that's David Clare, raise your hand.
It is David. Okay. Oh. Hi, Chris. Okay, thanks, Pat. You can start the meeting if you haven't already, have you? Okay, then we could do a roll call.
Krins? Lovelt? That's
Rick?
you, Rick.
Here, Rick's here.
Rick's
He's doing a roll call.
Claire?
He is on the phone,
Yep.
on the Zoom.
Gorman?
Yep.
Zislis?
Ted is not here. He did tell me, which I appreciate. Yeah.
Zach? Patrick?
Oh, Lord.
Lori? And Sweet? And Matt?
Or, yes. All right, thank you. I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes from last meeting. Is there anybody to second that, please? Thanks, Lori. Any discussion about those minutes? All in favor of approving them? Raise your hand. Thank you. Okay, let's, nobody's here for public comment, I don't believe. There's a Nicole on Zoom, but I don't see your hand up. Nicole, if you want to make a public comment, would you let us know by raising your hand? Other than that, you're just here to listen? Okay. Okay, the first item is, we've talked about this a couple of meetings. We've had a couple of breakout groups about the primary multimodal corridors. And first order of business, I think, is to decide what those corridors would be. You guys remember we talked about this last meeting, I think. And there is an attachment 1 here that is included. It's sort of laid out, and this again came out of one of the work sessions we had. We had like 2 or 3 of them on this topic. Sort of what the objectives of the multimodal corridors were, which sort of guided us as to why we picked them. Rick, in picking up the work on the wayfinding system, wanted to make sure we try to finalize this. So he had some ideas about this that we talked about that are now included in here. And, it's important to have this done so we can make the recommendation of what the corridors are. That will inform the wayfinding system to some extent. And then we can move on to make recommendations as to what we do now that we have a set of primary multimodal corridors. So I am actually, I think, looking for a vote on this tonight. I think we really concluded that the system that's in place is good and that it met our objectives. And again, this is stuff we've talked about. There were a couple things. The one really thing we were reviewing is how many north-south streets did we need? Because I think the original one had almost every street. I don't have it in front of me, but it had Snowmass, Second, Third, went. And, we had presented the fact it would be better to limit those. We talked about last meeting about keeping Snowmass in Second, that even though they were adjacent, they serve very different purposes and it would be good to have them in the system. And then, I'm sorry, Rick, did we keep Went?
I missed the last.
Um,
I missed the last commission meeting, but I thought we had decided on Went, yes, because it goes all the way to 133.
So keep Went.
But it does present a problem if you're going from the far north end of town to the far south end of town, because when it hits Maine, there's kind of a, I don't know if Kevin, just for conversation, could we put a 4-way stop there? Would that solve that problem? Because you'd have to kind of go diagonally across Maine from North 6th, is it, to Went? Do I have that right?
Yeah, 6th Street goes north, Went goes south
Yeah.
from Main Street.
But they're 20 feet offset on Main. So it's not a clean intersection.
Well, and then 6th Street only goes down to Colorado and then it stops.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think the conversation we had to do with, as a primary corridor coming down 8th and then going Colorado 2 blocks and then 6th and then went all the way to 133. That just seems it's feeding people into downtown, it's coming from the south, feeding people into downtown, and it goes all the way through. It's a bit of a, there's jog here and there, but they seem like they're
But it is,
heavily
yeah.
used streets.
But I'm remembering now, we eliminated Third, we kept Went. So we went Snowmass Second, Went. And then the problem we had is we didn't have anything on the west side of Soapers Park. And we kicked around the idea of 8th and 7th. And I think you and I talked about defaulting to 7th. It's more heavily biked than 8th, and it's adjacent to the park and the pool, which is nice. what the discussion is, I'll bring it up for discussion, but I think what we're talking about is keeping the existing system the way it is, with the exception of eliminating Third as a multimodal corridor and adding Seventh between Main Street and Sopers. Okay, that's
Instead of went,
keeping Went.
so we'd have two,
Right.
four. Okay,
Yeah,
so we got 4 north-south
right.
on the south side.
So the only real changes we've made, we've sort of affirmed the map that was been put in place 10 or 11 years ago. And in the interest of focusing our efforts and the traffic, we eliminated one street on the east side of Sopers Park and added one on the south. So the recommendation is everything stays as it is with the exception of eliminating Third Street as a multimodal corridor and adding Seventh between Main and Sopers. So does anybody have comments about that, questions? Open that up for discussion.
So what was the status of 8th? Was 8th?
8 would just stay a multimodal corridor as it is right now,
on the
coming
on the
into
north
town and
side?
stopping at Main Street.
On the north side, okay.
So if you wanted to continue on south, you would either go down to Snowmass or go down to 133, jog up to 7th, or you can keep going up and come out Went or Snowmass or Second.
Okay.
Questions, thoughts? Concern?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, David, hello.
Okay, hi there. Yeah, the only thing I have is for people that are traveling south on 8th, they, I guess if you're following the map, would then hit Main Street, jog over a block to 7th, which they can do. It's just, I still think that 8th Street and Main is a tough intersection. Not saying we absolutely do this, but if 7th is a corridor, would we ever want people to maybe, if let's just say they're going north on 7th Street towards Main, cross Main and go 1 or 2 blocks and then take a jog over to 8th instead of jogging on Main? I mean, it's a weird thing, but it's just a different path, you might say.
I'm not sure what you're saying, David. You're posing the question if.
Okay. So the way you're saying is 8th Street north of Main is a primary corridor.
It is.
And 7th south of Main would be a corridor.
Right.
And I'm assuming Main Street is as well?
Main Street is also.
Okay. So basically, if someone's kind of like, living on North 8th, they come all the way to Main Street, take a left to 7th, and then continue south on 7th.
That's right.
Okay. And I'm
Or-
just saying, would it be safer if instead they turn on Colorado maybe? Or
I think that's where that's where we were going with this idea that you take Colorado over to 6th and then Went goes all the way through to 133. I mean, and we're talking wayfinding, so part of what we're going to need to decide in wayfinding is how we direct people, but what makes the most sense. So you come down 8th, you take a left on Colorado, you take a right on 6th, and then you get to Main. There's a diagonal jog, but then you've got Went all the way to 133. So, I mean,
okay. And is that oh, right. Because 7th Street does a weird jog before you get to 133. It gets there, but it's a little unusual.
It does.
Okay.
I think I think I'm following you that I think what you're proposing is to make Colorado a primary corridor.
a block or two, perhaps. I mean, it might be better and safer than Maine. We're going to talk about this at the Wayfinding group, I'm sure.
Okay. Yeah,
I'd
it's
love an
just a
opinion
thought
here.
that-
Yeah,
Yeah.
just, I know the conversations we've had about this are that Main Street is and should remain because it's Main Street, right? It's got the things on it and things happening where people want to go and want to be, right? So if you turn off Colorado and you loop around, it kind of makes a nice connection going all the way through to the south, but it shaves off a big chunk of Main Street, which is, with a capital M, right? So,
Could I interject also? Because that is right where I live, a block from there. And to me, it depends, number one, on where you're going. And I actually find a great relief when I live off 8th. And if I'm heading towards 133, I love that I can just go straight on 8th. I don't want to go through that weird, busy intersection by White House Pizza and have to go onto Main to 7th. I like being in the trees on 8th and just going straight. I don't want to have to go to Colorado and jog around. I just want to be able to go straight on 8th from one end of town to the
I
other.
want to remind everybody too that just because it's not a multimodal corridor doesn't mean you can't bike on it, right? And actually one of the comments we have here, one of the objectives of these corridors is that the streets surrounding the corridors and flowing into the corridors need to be safe, right? And need to be usable. But it's to try to identify places where people want to go, so that we can wayfind them there. We can safety in numbers of people using these routes and, future improvements such as lighting and infrastructure. So don't think of it as like this is the only place you're allowed to bike, right? This is sort of a multi-purpose objective.
Yeah, and to Lori's point, I think you made the point that I think we thought was supporting the idea of people coming from the north, instead of them going to that weird intersection on Main, they would use Colorado to get around that intersection. It's not talking about people on the south part of Maine, but people on the north side. They're trying to get to the pool or to downtown or to the
Right.
park, that kind of thing. So, yeah.
So it helps them to avoid that weird
We just did
intersection.
that one intersection.
It's a
keeps-
really
yeah,
weird
people say
intersection.
that, yeah,
Yeah.
on Main.
Whether
yeah.
you're in a car, a
Right,
bus, a
right.
bike, or walking, it's difficult intersection.
Yeah, and I do agree as well. I mean, I live off of 8th, and yeah, more times than not, I would continue down South 8th Street and just deal with the fact that, yeah, there's one intersection that's not the best, in front of White House. Yeah, I can't comment on that little weird jog of 6 to when, because I've actually never really done that before. So,
But I guess
Yeah.
for us, what's the safest way to get people to Main Street? And if they have business on Main Street or they're going out to dinner or to the bonfire, is it to go to that weird intersection we keep referring to, or is it to have some other alternative route?
Well, again, I get to my comment that it is Main Street, so I'm not in favor of diverting people off of Main Street. And improvements have been put in place on 8th Street to this point, bringing us all the way up, I think, to Main, to make it try to make it a more multimodal corridor. So a lot of that's been done. And to your comment, I understand, Dave, you kind of get on 8th and keep going if you're going south out of town. But if you're going to the pool or to Soper's Park,
no,
you might jog on to Main and go over to 7th,
absolutely. No, I agree with you that it is kind of weird to have a
Yeah.
main location like Sopris and not be able to get there. Although in theory, went, is one side of the park. So yeah.
I'm sorry, Ally, do you have No?
I like the idea of 7th and I think directing people towards that beautiful park, is nice. And like you said, the pool's right there, which will also be beautiful. So somehow I like keeping both of those in this comment.
Okay.
Actually, maybe I will jump in. I just want to advocate for 7th for seconding that, like, someone on their way going somewhere down 8th is not going to have a problem transitioning from 8th to the other side of 8th. But for the sake of our slow commuters and movers and stopping and going, preferably making that easy and safe near the things that they're going to, like the pool and businesses, coffee shop that's opening right there, recycles right there. I think it's going to cater to that a lot better on 7th than it would on 8th.
Okay.
So one thing for people who are using the Rio Grande, which is, a fair number of people, especially tourists, if you're going from, let's say, the bus station down the Rio Grande and you want to go downtown, if I have this right, the only connecting street generally will be 6th Street for a corridor. Is that right?
Well, 8th Street would be a connector.
4th Street, the promenade,
Yeah,
the path next to True Nature,
yeah.
Second Street.
Which is
That's-
the one right
that's second?
here?
Well, that's
You come in and hit Main and, yeah.
past True Nature, you hit 7th.
Well, what I was asking is on our primary corridor route, if someone is going from the bus station, they could take 8th. And after that would be, I don't know, what's the next crossing?
What's the question, David? What's your,
You are going from the bus station and you're going down the Rio Grande. And you want to go, let's say, to the middle of Main Street. I understand you will hit 8th Street and you could take a right because 8th Street is going to be a primary corridor north of Main. If you did continue further on, what would be your next
it
corridor?
would be, well,
ahead?
there's a little outlet, I think it's 6, is that what it is or something? But there's, the next major one, I think, is at the town hall, right where we are now, right?
Right.
Yeah, I would say the promenade in the long run is envisioned as a major bike pedestrian axis that's
Connects all the way through.
would ideally go from Pepino's to the nature park or whatever.
Right, okay, so that would, there you go, right, the
And
promenade, right.
Connect, yeah, right there at that park or with
Should
the
that just
Rio
be
Grande.
added at this point then?
Yeah, so that's a major connection to the Rio Grande to town.
Okay, so until that is built, anybody going down the Rio Grande South would exit at 8th Street or like 4th north of Main is not a primary. It would be maybe just when they kind of come down as
Industry, right up here, just to the east of Industry Way, right? Or is this, what is this right here?
You mean Merrill 4th Street?
Yeah. It's Merrill.
Merrill into Industry.
Is that part of our network? That's all I'm asking. I'm just.
No, I don't think so. At this point, I don't think it connects, but we have the promenade and we have 8th Street coming off the Rio Grande.
And there's a lot of question marks about the future of development
Absolutely,
over there.
absolutely. Okay.
Yeah, and so, yeah, I mean, I think Merrill/Industry has been a street that's on our radar anyway, so. You have a comment, Kevin?
Just a thought, because I think I understand where David's going with this is once you get past 8th, there's nothing to get you from the Rio Grande up to the south that is a priority corridor. Would it be worth, because the promenade is already built from the Rio Grande Trail up to Main Street, would that be worthwhile just noting that on the map?
Sure, yeah. That's a good solution, thank you.
Yeah. Like I said, I think that would be
Kevin,
fine.
Always surprises us.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right.
Could I just mention this Merrill intersection right here is very, very, very confusing because I feel like it's different than all the other it's different than the 8th intersection. Like, I wish there was more consistency from the way we made the cross of 8th Street and the Rio Grande and made it the same kind of intersection. Because I feel like all the trucks particularly, and they come zooming by the dog park, heading towards Main Street. And when I'm walking on the Rio Grande, I feel like the cars zoom over across that intersection. It's so broad. I think they don't realize that pedestrians are walking right there and nobody stops or slows down.
Yes, noted. I think, yeah. it's-
Consistency from,
Right.
The hill has something to do with it too, but
it happens every time. It's like a chicken dance.
Get a shovel out there and just level it off, will you, Kevin?
The approach grades to that intersection coming from the north going south would make adding additional height to the crossing problematic for vehicles going across it.
Oh.
Or different
You're
color.
damned if you do, right?
Or signs yield to, there's nothing, I don't think there's anything there.
Well, they have the
There
right
are
of way there.
crossing signs there. They're just. way
Okay,
up
guys, I'm
in the
gonna,
air.
I'm gonna draw this conversation to a close and
Yeah.
break a little protocol here and make a motion from the chair, but since I have the notes in front of me, let me do that, okay? I'll make a motion that the Bike Ped Commission propose a multimodal corridor system that mirrors what we have now with the following changes. It removes Third Street from the system. It adds 7th Street between Main and 7th, Main and Sopris to the system. And it adds the promenade coming off the Rio Grande into town. So is there a second for that motion? Anyone? Ally seconding it? Great, thank you. Now, we've had a discussion already, but is anybody, I know we've raised questions about Colorado and 8th and 7th, but why don't we take a vote on that? We have a motion and a second. All in favor of that motion, raise your hand. David, where are you on that?
Trying to raise my hand. There you go.
I think we've got unanimous consent on that, okay? Rick, I think, we'll clean this up and add to it in terms of what the Bike Ped thinks we ought to do with those corridors. So, we'll make a recommendation for changes and how we might be treated. But I think for purposes of moving forward with wayfinding, that gives you some closure from the Bike Ped
Thank you.
perspective. I mean, again, it's, up to the trustees as to whether they accept those, but you guys can work with that. Okay?
Yeah, I'm just gonna say, I don't know if I think the core district area thing is gonna be resolved. I feel like trustees are gonna have opinions on those ones. But I almost feel like those are, you have what the outward, more outlying areas. I feel like those corridors are more well established and there's plenty of work to do on those, particularly to begin with.
But
And part of me almost feels like at some point, maybe we just want like the central core district that's kind of like every street needs to be essentially
yeah,
bike friendly in some way. And I think there's a question there of, wanting to direct people to the streets that make them feel the most comfortable, but also wanting to direct improvements to streets that are not that comfortable. And that's where I think we had the question last time about the, 3rd Street versus Went or whatever.
Right.
And 3rd Street to me does make a lot of sense as somewhere I would recommend people to, if I was recommending somebody to go north-south, I think I would probably start there. If I would, hopefully we would have a crossing at some point south of, near the Montessori there. And I would try to tell people to go across to the 3rd Street and go all the way up that street if I was going to actually give a recommendation. But I think Went probably would benefit from traffic calming more than, I don't think 3rd Street needs doodads in the middle of the street and stuff like that.
yeah, and I think we also discussed that this wasn't necessarily channeling to people where the improvements had already been made, but channeling the multimodal corridors to where there's a need. And, we felt the density on 2nd and the traffic to the schools on 2nd kind of warranted that as being a multimodal corridor. But not as an official recommendation, but Chris, I'll send you some notes on this if you wouldn't mind just test driving it with your,
I mean, I think you're already on the right path of like, yeah, Second Street's a no-brainer. I think Village Road is a no-brainer. Hendrick and on whatever it is on through to RVR is a no-brainer. And those are, and Sopris, I think those are
Right.
great ones to really start with.
good, okay.
But then we can get the minutia of the other ones like could be built on over time and.
Yeah, and I think we're trying to, every street's like, priority quarter, then none of them are priority quarter, right? So
Yeah,
that's kind of what we're trying to balance. Okay, thank you, everyone. Rick, would you jump in and give us a little update on, and I think a lot of people here don't even know that you started this, so start at the beginning.
Okay, well, wayfinding was on the recommendations that we had for the first year, at least, beginning the process in the first year of implementation. So it came up at a trustee meeting in June, I think, where Parks and Rec and Bike Ped gave the trustees an update. So it seemed like the moment was right since it was, it had come up sort of organically for us to take the lead and get started. Kevin and two people from Parks and Rec, the director Eric and the commission head Hollis, and I met with Kevin on July 1st to talk. And I think our primary goal there was to decide to just get some feedback from Kevin on what limitations we might have. Are there rules about signs and where they go? And I mean, that Kevin, please correct me if I misinterpret, but Kevin basically said, there's all kinds of restrictions on road signs for traffic, but for pedestrian and bike signs, we have virtually the limits of our own creativity is about all that we have to deal with. So we have all kinds of opportunity for creativity to create something unique. I reached out to several people in the community, the Chamber of Commerce. Andrea at the Chamber of Commerce is interested. We have invited people to a subcommittee meeting to kind of take this forward. Kevin's suggestion was that we keep the group small, and that we keep it to we limit it to no more than 2 people from any one commission, which will mean that we do not have to post it as a public meeting. We can, and Kevin's feeling was you're going to have a group of people from all around the community helping. So we're going to get, naturally get public input. And then obviously we're going to come back to Bike Ped with suggestions for your approval, and then it's going to go on to the trustees. So I think we feel comfortable, at least at the early stages, with a group and meetings that aren't public meetings. And am I interpreting that correct, Kevin?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, good.
Yeah.
So right now we have Ron from Age Friendly that's interested in helping, and we have Michael from Carbondale Arts. Michael, as it turns out, worked for a landscape architecture company for many years and has specific experience developing wayfinding for a national landscape architect firm and for clients of a national firm. So he's excited about it. Oliver is going to participate from both WeCycle and from our commission. So there's 2 of us, and so but I also would suggest that I come back to you all at our meetings and see if there's interest in subcommittee work. I mean, we may need a subcommittee to specifically just look at what kinds of signs, what kind of messaging, what the design of the sign, what looks like, what messaging we want to have on that sign. But I think we're going to meet on the 7th this week on Thursday. I'll have more to report on that. But this is an initial meeting to really look at what our objectives are. Timeline. Kevin has suggested it's probably going to take us 1.5 years to make this happen, and in any significant way, probably the summer of 27 or spring of 27. So we've got 1.5 years to figure it out.
Great, thanks. Any questions for Rick on that?
great.
Just a thought as far as an addition or two for wayfinding. possibly showing restrooms if we do have public restrooms and maybe where WeCycles are.
Thanks. Yeah, we did get the restroom suggestion a couple of days ago from someone. That's a great suggestion. Thanks. And we have somebody from WeCycle that's on the committee, so he'll
Right. That's what I was saying.
he'll
Hopefully
promote that, I'm sure.
WeCycles get shown, but yeah, tourists should, be able to hopefully figure out WeCycle.
I'll pass that one up though. See if we can get some signage, at least on the top 3 WeCycle stations if we figure that out. Oh, yeah.
It would be cool to, yeah, obviously dig into at some point, maybe mapping as well of like our couple certain places having. Like, I guess if you hit the, say the
Yep.
promenade on
Yep.
Rio Grande Trail to have a map of
Yep.
all the corridors or whatever, or recommended. Or maybe just a gradation of like recommended to not recommended streets or whatever,
Right.
just color. I
But
don't
also,
know.
yeah, isn't that the purpose of the app? Like, because if you put a map, there may not be any bikes there. So I think in a way it's redundant. To me, you look on here to see if there's any bikes at a station anyway before you go.
Yeah.
So I like the bathroom idea though.
I think you could still say where the stations are, in general.
Yeah.
And have bathrooms and any other other like local information you can want.
Rick, when do you think you're going to have your first meeting?
Thursday.
Thursday, I'm sorry, I missed that, yeah. I think we should, Rick, thanks for picking this up. This came up at a meeting. We were presenting to the trustees the same night that Parks and Rec was, and it was sort of on their list. So the idea, like you said, came together. We should combine forces and get this done because there seems to be a little momentum. But Rick really picked it up and put this team together. So thank you, Rick, for doing that and seeing it through. I did include in the package, and Rick, these came from you, sort of early level, I assume, objectives of the wayfinding project,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, we haven't met yet, but we're going to talk about all these things. Specific destinations we feel are key for people, particularly people who don't know town well. Placement, location, design, I think branding. I talked to Andrea at the chamber about their branding that they've done for tourism, which is take it easy. I mean, I'd love to use that, take it easy, get on your bike. She wasn't opposed to it, but that's a chamber brand, and I don't know, but those are decisions we'll talk about and get back to you on. But yeah, distance information on the signs, both in probably time and miles, all these things we're going to discuss.
Yeah, so this, again, we don't need to take any action on this list. This is a preliminary list.
Yeah.
You'll be meeting, your group will refining, putting more detail on this and coming back to us for insights or thoughts from bike ped.
And probably, it's really helpful to have our primary corridors identified. I think when in talking to Kevin, we're not going to do it all at once. So we'll have to prioritize within what we just decided, all those primary corridors. What do we want to do first? What's more key? So those are, complex decisions we'll be talking about. The next year.
Okay, great.
I
Questions?
have one question. So, I biked around town last week to look at the current wayfinding signs that we have, which there are a bunch of different types. I guess maybe separately, not to be too much of a Debbie Downer, but I'm like a little skeptical of like the use of wayfinding signs, given that I had to go, even though I've lived here for a long time, I had to go around and explore. And it's like, I know I've seen signs somewhere, but I have no idea where they are or what they say. And I found a bunch and like took photos of the different types. But I think some of them are RAFTA signs on the Rio Grande. Some of them I assume are town signs. But yeah, one might be worth working with RAFTA if we want them all to be consistent. And two, I'm wondering if it's like, as part of this, we would take down some of the existing ones if consistency is like part of the goal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think we want a branding, we want a sign design that's consistent so people immediately recognize that's my next sign. So absolutely, yeah. Thank you.
We'll see. It's
Yeah.
in progress. It's a project. I think there's a lot of interest in having a system in town. And I think it will help direct capital work and everything, and bike paths and everything else, right? So Rick, you'll manage the participation from Bike Ped. I mean, if people want to participate, let Rick know. I think you've got a team of 2 already, but to the extent somebody can't make it or you want a different perspective,
I would really appreciate if anybody's particularly interested in, the look of the sign, the consistency of the sign, or branding. We could easily have a 2-person subcommittee working on some of those details
right,
as we go along.
right. So, and let Rick know directly only to Rick if you have anything you would want him to take up in his subcommittee when it comes to wayfinding. Sound good? Okay. Are we on a tactile urbanism? Bike ped survey results. So close and yet so far. Before we get into this, and there's a lot, right? There's a big stack of comments. I don't think we need to go through all of those at this point because we're still collecting. I'm sure we'll get more. I would encourage you all to. We want the comments, right? A lot of this should be driven by public comment. That's what the community is about, right? And that's how decisions need to be made. But I do want to make sure that all points of view are represented. And so if you see anybody, people out there you're talking to and they have an opinion, please tell them to register their thoughts, okay? Either through the QR code or through Carbondale Connect, okay? Or just email Kevin. Fill up his box. I was thinking about how to go through this. I think it would be helpful, I think for all of us, if to the extent you guys have each experienced some of these projects to kind of share your thoughts of how you found them, either as a pedestrian, a cyclist, or a motorist. Rick, can we start over with you on the right?
So my personal experience, or what?
Let's just talk about our individual experience with these projects and how you view them, or did they work for you? Did you find them confusing? Were you safe or not? I'd love to just get the opinion of the people here.
Yeah. Well, I just read 36 pages of comments, which actually it's good feeling about mostly. I live near Hendrick, and I ride my bike a lot. So I have to say, I get the comments about it just looked confusing. There's so many bollards, especially at the little mini traffic circle and the median at Ivy. You're coming up on that thing. It's like, what the heck is that? Because it's almost like Kevin, you tried to make it too cool. It's just everything was so well defined, but it just from a distance, it's just cluster of bollards, and it just immediate reaction is, what the heck is that? So I get the comments that we had, very much so. And I wonder if we could have made some of those things more simple, just super simple. I was looking on today, like around a little circle, it's just little round circle. Did we need the medians on each of the 4 rows leading into the circle? Because that just was, 25 more bollards. So I felt like I was safer. I felt like traffic was slower. I've seen many roundabouts in Boulder when I lived there, so it was no big deal to get used to that. I went up and down Main Street a lot, West Main a lot, so I liked that. I do agree with the comments about the bike lanes being, disrupted. They're not continuous bike lanes, and so if I were to recommend, if I were to start over, I'd say, should we do bike lanes? If we can't do it, continuous. Because there's so many comments about, it's great, and then all of a sudden, you're at the median and you're squeezed, and there's an so cars have to merge with you. That was amazing how many people mentioned that. That was over and over and over again. So I feel like that we kind of misfired there. I don't know, maybe we shouldn't have, or maybe we should have had more feedback from the community first before we tested it and truly tested continuous bike lanes. I guess that's,
Okay.
first reaction.
Oliver, how about you? You probably biked through some of those areas.
Yeah, I didn't intentionally seek any of them out, but bike across town every day, so I think I've hit them all. But no, today I just did the West Main Street, really enjoyed that. That was a part of my daily commute, and those bike lanes west of the roundabout that's great. The Hendrick one is a bit crazy. I'll echo that. It's the abrupt endings. Don't seem to be really helpful, but luckily this is just a pilot, so come wintertime, it's all gonna get torn up. So I personally would like to see those kind of changes of not leading bikes into traffic in certain areas. But no, everything else has been I've really been enjoying it. As a daily cyclist, I do feel like I have a place on the road now rather than needing to squeeze over, and have cars just blow past me. And yeah,
Okay,
been
great.
liking the changes. Yeah.
What do you think, Andy?
So yeah, I think I've probably biked, driven, and walked through all of them. I think I have a lot of thoughts and could go into a lot of detail, but I'll try to just do some top line stuff now. Yeah, overall, I think the bike lanes are great, both on Hendricks and West Main. Also agree about, especially on Hendricks in particular, how much they stop and start. I think could be improved. I think even, I'm not sure if there's like rules about what is allowed or what is not, but right now they stop every time there's an intersection, even if it turned into like a dotted line instead of a solid line or something. I think that could be an improvement, or I don't know, maybe there's other options, but I would like to
Your
see.
experience in riding in the bike lane, was that on Hendrick? Did that, you've been on that bike lane, I assume?
Yeah.
Did you find problems as you went like around the median feature or the roundabout or?
Yeah, so I think the median is definitely an issue. I think the road is just not, I don't know, maybe there's a different way of doing it, but I think the road is not wide enough to have the bike lanes and the median. And to me, that's actually I think the worst part of the entire project. If we could somehow fix that, I think that would be a big improvement. I'd even be happy to just get rid of the median and just have that bike lane continue.
Yeah, maybe what we're learning is these things don't work great together, right?
Yeah.
But, okay.
And then, yeah, I agree that all the bollards, just like looking at it from far away, is a bit confusing. I know that this was a pilot project, there's like kind of limited options of like how to actually show them, but maybe if it becomes something more permanent, something that is just like visually less confusing, even if like the actual layout is exactly the same, I think that could help a lot. Last thing I wanted to say, actually two more things. One, there's the arrow is where the bike lane ends, the diagonal arrow. I don't know if that's required, but I think that's a bit confusing, where like if you're on a bike, it sort of implies that you should like go more into the middle of the lane. I think most people on a bike would want to
Arrow
just,
almost says, get out there.
Yeah.
Quick, get in front of the cars. Yeah.
but I don't know if it's required for some reason. And then on West Main, if you're coming into town, the bike lane ends actually both ways. The bike lane ends, but before you get to Hendricks, because there's the right turn lane, or sorry, left turn lane starts there. I think it would be great if it could, especially coming into town, if that bike lane could continue all the way to Hendricks, and even if that means removing that left turn lane, if that's an option, I think that would be really great because that little section
Right,
feels the sketchiest to me.
okay,
All right, I'll stop there.
great, thanks. How about you guys?
Yeah, just got a couple unless you want to
I'll go last.
wrap us up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just add, I like the bike lanes. I think those are our first and only bike lanes so far in Carbondale, right? That's the first time we've had them anywhere. So I thought it was cool to try those out as opposed to our, what do we call it in the middle? Sharrows.
Yeah,
I know that's kind of depending on where there's room. So yeah, I liked the bike lanes, and then with the median, yeah, it's tricky there because I think was the idea that we were kind of trying either or. We're saying let's try the bike lanes here, let's try the median here, and see which one works.
I didn't
better.
get that sense. I think we were hoping they would all work together because we wanted bike lanes to narrow, but we also felt that stretch of road needed something to slow cars in addition. I mean, that was a recommendation coming out of the work group, that there were a few hot spots that we thought the bike lanes wouldn't be sufficient.
Right, okay.
And so we wanted to try some other things.
Yeah, well, yeah, then I guess I would say maybe just bike lanes there, bike lanes instead of the median is maybe
Right.
worth trying or looking at to see if there's room. But like a lot of the comments, yeah, it's hard to do end one and start the next. And then, yeah, I liked them on, I think, yeah, fully connecting them on West Main is great. And then the turn at Rooma Girl. So
Coming off on,
yeah,
off of Sopers, onto
on
Sopers.
Vickery Library there. I think that generally worked.
The little median thing.
Like median thing that kind of keeps cars from swinging out too weird, or it's just a weird intersection anyway, so it kind of lines you up a little better and kind of gives you a heads up that there's a weird intersection coming up, and that seems to work there. The other ones, I don't think I got a good enough sense of to comment on.
How about you, Lori? You had a chance to experience them?
Yeah, I love the West Main bike lanes because I feel like that's a very kind of industrial feeling street. So I love those. I'm gonna mention one no one's mentioned. I think it's Snowmass Drive. Is that the one where the little jail is? Yeah.
When?
That's Went.
Oh, that's Went. So my daughter and I were driving. She was driving. She's a visitor. And she almost went into the oncoming lane because the bollards narrowed. We were coming from like Penny Hot Springs into town, and she made that right and almost went into oncoming. She swerved. It was very, very, very confusing. The color of the bollards, or it's very narrow. So that definitely needs to get looked at. But I remember Andy and I both brought up the point before we did any of this, we were concerned about the ugliness of the bollards. And on 8th Street, where you created the bulb outs on those two intersections, like walking towards 133, I also felt it was so distracting. It got too narrow. It just, in reality, it's on the ground and it might work. But with the visual of the vertical bollards, I don't think anyone liked it, but they may like it if we had. I wish there was a way to do a temporary that mimicked more of what it would be. And I think we wouldn't have gotten so many angry.
Oh, you think it just warped the perspective of the feature?
Yeah,
little
because
bit,
the feature would be really just on the street, a little curb.
You want a cardboard curb or something?
Yeah, or we talked about that, like, was there some kind of a rubber curb you could have just laid out, even with orange paint on it? So I think it could have worked, but it didn't work because of the blight of all of and the confusion. And I appreciate your effort. It's not personal, but I think that's part of the problem of why we got these comments. But also, I just read the comment where someone said, if you want all this, move to Aspen. And honestly, I kind of get that. And my husband, he refuses to answer any of your, he'll never fill one out. It's like, why doesn't your committee just change the speed limit in town to 15 miles an hour? And you don't need any of this. That was his comment. And
Because telling
Have
people
we
will still drive 25. What's that?
That-
We haven't, but I think, sort of the one thing I've heard repeated many times in this room when we've had these discussions is two things. One, that our police force isn't staffed to regularly stop speeders. There's many more important things that are going on in this community that they need to pay attention to. So more enforcement isn't necessarily the answer. And that I think most traffic engineers will tell you, from what I've learned, is that people will drive as fast as they're comfortable regardless of the speed limit. And unless you're making them slow down because of the features, they're going to just drive. That's what I think I've taken away from Kevin's thumbs up, and
Really?
I got a nod and a thumbs up. That's pretty good.
I just want to add one more thing. I love the green sharrows all over the streets. I
Yes.
love it. I love it. I smile every time I walk or ride over them. And during Mountain Fair, everyone was in the streets riding their bike. And I'm like, yeah, this is what it should feel like all the time. So.
All right, thanks, Lori.
For those.
How about you, Ally? You got any personal
Minor
experiences with the
Just
projects?
So, I can relate to them because I mostly bike them with the 2-year-old, right? So that's pretty much how I approach it because I don't drive this very often. And if I do it, I'm usually on a bike myself or walking with a 2-year-old on a bike. So, I appreciate the ideas of narrowing the lanes and taking out like at Sopris and at Went, narrowing the lanes. I get the idea, like there's no natural inclination to create a left and a right turn at the same time, which I think created a lot of problems specifically at Sopris. If you're coming off Sopris, people would get next to each other. And so it narrows it to one lane. I don't know if that slows it down so much that people are losing their minds, but I did like that Sopris and Went narrowing. I will say that the Went one, it was visually very, very narrow and I was a little surprised, but that would be fixed with a more permanent setup. Hendrick, I appreciate most of it. I wonder if it is too many things at once, because I do keep to the sidewalk because with kids, I think they should always be on the sidewalk. And I don't know what age it's really appropriate to start putting them in the street, but I do wonder if it could even be minimized to just biking on one side in the road and then sidewalk or something like to help reduce the congestion. That being said, the bike lanes get really tough when you get closer to Main because there's so many intersections and entrances and between Ace, the street, and then the mismatching streets on the other side. I think it was a tough spot to put bike lanes in, so I don't know that I love them there. I do like the idea of the simple roundabouts. I think if we could simplify that, they would be more effective. And humans just take the path of least resistance. So at the end of the day, if they don't like it, they're going to just drive over it. And I saw a lot of people just driving over the Ballards. And I was really impressed when they bounced back up. So if we're going to use those, we can write those into the budget. But the one question I did have is the turns and how the flow on Hendrick, if you're gonna turn into one of the residential streets like Ivy or Rock Court, I didn't drive it, but I wondered if those were functional and if people were struggling to turn it all, and just running them over more. Did you notice there was a lot more specific to those median turn bollards? Yeah. I don't know. I feel like those were a little confusing for people. And that is often where the roundabouts and then the turns, I would just see people driving over them.
Well, I'm going to give Kevin a chance just to address the design details like lane widths and stuff. So I think it's important that we all understand that. Listen, first of all, Kevin, to you and Public Works, thanks for getting that stuff out there. You measured the traffic and you got that stuff started. I think it's great. And most of your comments, I think most of the comments we got focus on Hendrick and West Main, right? I think, the comments on I thought the bulb arts were good. I mean, the comment that stands out in my mind the most is it makes me go slower. Which is, it's kind of the idea. But I think and I appreciate your comments, Lori, that maybe just visually it looks different than it is, but Kevin will talk to us about that in a second. And again, remember, our consultant map recommended bulb outs in a number of places around town. Not tactile urban is in process, but things that, we could go after now. And so I think it's really good to just think about those in operation and what they've done to slow traffic down in that 2-block section. Because that's something that the council said, go get them, right? You want bulb outs, put them in. As far as my reading of the map report, anyway, they were, I really like the Went and Sopris. I live on Sopris. I'm at that corner a lot, and it definitely slows cars down coming off the highway. And that was the objective of those 2 trials. And it was also recommended in map. Again, I'm not sure we got to remember, as Rick was pointing out to me, trying as we move forward here with recommendations to the trustees, what we do to separate tactical urbanism things that we were going to try and see how they worked, and things that sort of the map consultant said, you should do these right now. They're low-hanging fruit, proven effective, and if you're serious about making improvements, you should do them. And I think one of those was trying to slow. He didn't call them bulb outs. He called them something else at the intersections of 133. Turning radii. He talked about turning radii, widening the turning radii coming off the highway. So, I think my experience so far is that those 2 sections, testing traffic coming off 133, have been effective in slowing traffic. And I'd say the same thing about the bulb outs. I've ridden it on a bike and driven in a car, definitely slows me down in a car. And when I'm in the car, I notice a lot of bikers in the bike lanes, so they seem to be using them. I do think that there are a couple of pinch points that, make it a little difficult. And, like I said earlier, maybe, I think, and Rick, you'd point this out too, that there are we recognize a need in these long stretches to slow traffic, and that maybe narrowing of the street through bike lanes wouldn't be enough. And there were some other options, I think, like a raised sidewalk, crosswalk, but we didn't have the technology to sort of test that. So we tested some other things. But I think if you look at the median and you look at the roundabout, they really work to slow traffic. I mean, when you're driving a car, you've got to slow down to navigate those features. Maybe we discover that they don't work well adjacent to a bike lane, but I think they do work well to slow traffic. And that's a data point we should embrace, right? With that, Kevin, I'm just curious, would you just comment about the criteria and sort of lane widths and things you use? I remember I asked you, for example, that the lane widths we're using on the redesigned 8th Street is sort of the format you stuck with. And is that accurate?
Yeah, so we were shooting for, and when I say this, always add the word ish, 10-ish foot wide travel lanes for cars.
Mhm.
And then, particularly on Hendrick and West Main, then I do think on West Main, we went maybe 10.5 just because of the recognition that there's larger vehicles that use that on a regular basis. But then, like where we had bike lanes, it was just whatever's left in the road divided by 2 if you want one down each side. And I'm not surprised by these comments because it was our first year of trying any of this stuff. I don't think that there was ever an intent to make Hendrick have all of those things. I think it was to see what we thought would work best. Yeah, I mean, if we were to install, for example, permanent bike lanes on Hendrick, we would definitely run striping through most of the intersections. with some dotted lines. We just didn't do that this time. And part of that is why you see those arrows. Where you see the arrow, it means it's ending. And typically when you end a lane, you tell them, hey, you got to get over. That's what those are intended to do. Could it be reconfigured or like around Ivy? You might be able to shrink the bike lanes down and still get a median in there. I'm not 100% sure about
Yeah.
that. So again, I wouldn't think about it as, is Hendrick a success or a failure? I think you hit on it. What's working and what isn't, and what do we want it to be when it grows up?
So, and I appreciate that. So just take me back to the width for a second, because we got a lot of comments on that. On 8th Street, are we using 10-foot wide lanes? And as you come down 8th Street or Garfield and Euclid, do cars have 10 feet inside those bulb outs?
Yes.
They do.
Except for at Euclid where the road isn't even 20 feet wide
Okay,
on the
so,
south
okay.
side.
Right.
That's why if you noticed, we initially had bollards all the way around and we took some of those out.
Just because the road itself was too.
Because the road is not 20 feet wide, so it's like, well.
That's why people felt it was more dangerous, because we're all condensed.
Yeah, I think it's partially the vertical nature of the obstruction, and you're coming, unlike 8th Street where you just are going and you're being narrowed down. And that, I think, gives people a sense of like, I'm not gonna have enough room to get by. And the first couple of times I drove it, I had somebody coming at me, I kind of like, but you slow down and you have plenty of room to get by, so it works. And I know there was one comment in there that, two F-150s can't pass each other on Hendrick, but they clearly can. I mean, it's a little uncomfortable, but that's kind of the idea, right? And because I know the widest S-150 is 7.2 feet wide. I looked it up. So two of them would certainly fit, even with the mirrors out. And I see you, Craig. Just one more question. The median and the turning radius around the roundabout, or what we're calling it, is that adequate for people with trailers and larger vehicles?
Not as it is.
Not as it is.
Right now.
Okay.
What you would see if you went with that permanently. And maybe this is worth trying at another intersection next year, is all those mini roundabouts are designed to have trailers go right over the top of them. And we limited that ability with those planters and those bollards on this one, knowing that one, there's other ways in and out of all those neighborhoods if they're uncomfortable doing that. And two, knowing that emergency vehicles can drive right over those bollards. And as Ally pointed out, they pop right back up.
Right.
So it wasn't a limitation on emergency access there, but it would be raised, nothing in the middle of it. So whether it's a semi, pickup with the boat behind it, whatever.
And that's by design.
There's just no way to accommodate them going around that whole thing. It's like the roundabout we have on.
Just not big enough, right?
Well, the one on Main, that big concrete apron is so semi-trailers can drive around it and their tires go up on that thing.
Okay. And one other design question I have, the median design you use, sort of the offset middle of the road chicanes, as opposed to maybe, chicanes on the outside of the curb that narrow the lane. I'm just curious as to why you went with that.
Could I expand that? Why did it need to be so wide? It's because it's really wide.
The intention was to keep it down to 10-foot wide lanes.
Between the curb and okay.
Yeah.
But if we had a continuous bike lane, could that median be foot and a half wide? And still
Potentially.
be effective?
Potentially.
Okay,
Yeah.
Well, and I'm also thinking, Rick, if we took that design and put it, on Village, Cal, wherever going out of town where there's a speeding problem that we've heard of with that, where there aren't bike lanes. And I'm curious as to why that design is supposed, from the side of the street chicane kind of thing, right? Because I think that design seems to work and could have applications in places around town that we don't have bike lanes.
I was looking at it as that's its own test, not testing it with bike lanes.
Okay, yeah.
And typically, and I think some of the comments reflected this, and even I think Craig pointed out, they lose the narrowing loses its effectiveness over
It gets
time.
too narrow, yeah.
So what I was trying to do was think about if all we had was bike lanes here, people would drive fairly fast. Oh, they'd accelerate over time probably
Yeah.
because they'd get used to them, particularly if there's not bollards, if it's just paint. So what I was thinking with that median was make them actually move their car over against another obstruction in the curb to reinforce, not only is it getting narrow, but you're also having to navigate it.
Yeah.
That's,
Okay, yeah, I mean, I know there's different ways to pinch, and I was just curious as to why you went with that. I kind of like that one.
Could I just also, what was the purpose of the medians, the 4 medians leading into the mini roundabout? Does that have a function? Because when I looked at this, pulled this up, there isn't such a thing there.
that is not a mini roundabout. They may call it that on the caption, but that's not, because it's not designed to be driven over.
Okay.
Do you mean the little triangles
Yeah,
that
there's a
take you in?
triangle, all 4, leading in on all 4 streets, yeah.
On most of the mini roundabouts, you will see that. Again, I did it with 2-foot tall bollards, so yeah, it's obnoxious, but it would probably be the same concept where you, in a real world application of that, you'd still have those, but they would have medians that have curbs on them like this to where tires could track over them if they needed to.
Right.
I think they kind of work to
Yeah.
make it more of a feature to slow things down.
It was just, I have to say, I didn't comment on 8th. But I think it's really hard. It was hard for me, and I knew what we were doing, but I think it's hard for the average person on Carbondale to envision a bulb out with all those. I mean, you see all these bollards, and it's, as Lori pointed out, they're vertical, and it's just hard to envision what a bulb out's supposed to look like. So people had no clue, right? I mean, and I don't know how we get around that.
I really don't either. I'm open to suggestions, but the more you shrink them down, like if you use the little tabs that you've seen,
Just get
then
run
people
over.
just drive over the top of it. And
I mean, short of putting in a curb, you got to put something in, right?
and could we try to find something that's maybe a foot tall instead? Those are all 2 feet tall.
Well, we're also gonna get more data because we'll be measuring speeds again. So that'll help guide us as well. Craig, what do you got?
Well, I just wanted to mention that, yeah, like Kevin said, over time, I'm seeing more cars shoot past the roundabout and the median pretty fast. The area in between, so it seems like those 2 features slow the traffic down locally. Like, I live right in between them, and cars are going quite fast between them. And
Making up
mainly
for lost
because-
time, maybe they have to slow down.
Because they have a 20-foot wide lane if no one is coming in the other direction, so they just use it. And so they're barreling right down the middle of the street. So if we're interested in keeping cars to, around 20 miles per hour, we're not really too close to that at this point. So I'm wondering about, I did a little bit of online research about like center lines and just something visual to keep define lanes. Because there's no defined lane unless there's a car coming in the other direction that, with the bike lanes,
Yeah,
What I've read, though, at least, and I brought a book with me that I can share, that it's like, is that center lines generally make people drive faster actually, just because of
Yeah.
there's less
I can see the
uncertainty.
reference on that because I found some that, don't indicate that. It seems like they actually keep people in their lanes and maybe it's context specific, but on Hendrick, I think if people actually had 10-foot wide lanes instead of 20 when, they'd be slowing down more.
I think we need some expert advice on that, but I can see, I've heard both, right? That a lane sort of gives you a runway. But if you felt constrained between a lane and a bike lane, maybe it would have a different effect. I don't know, but. Yeah, Chris.
I guess from hearing all this commentary and from my observations, I do feel like I'm more on board with the idea, at least, of the bike lanes. I feel like it's a potentially cheaper initial thing to do. And in the mobility corridors, I sort of liked the way it was focused on making it easier to bike and walk, and was not really focused on making it more annoying to drive or making it traffic calming is not necessarily even mentioned in there, but I think to some degree, some of the traffic calming stuff seems a little bit like maybe willfully irritating or something sometimes. And so I guess I would just encourage us to try to focus on like building the actual network for bikes and thinking about how bikes are moving and really prioritizing that as the first thing. And then I think you'll get a lot of peripheral benefit of having to narrow the street anyway. And maybe if cars, maybe not all cars, you're not going to keep everybody from speeding all the time. And you always notice when somebody speeds. But I think just getting the streets a little bit narrower, and I would still make a plea for us to experiment with two-way bike lanes, because I think we could have more of a continuous. If you only have to maintain it on one side of the street, you have more opportunity to deal with parking on the other side of the street. You have more possibility, I think, of creating a continuous route. You don't have confusion on bicyclists about going the wrong way on a bike lane. It's all just either way. And I just think if they, I feel like that's the common thing in like the Netherlands is often you have a narrow street, really narrow street, and oftentimes cars are parked up onto cobblestones or whatever. And then you've got a bike lane that's almost as wide as the street itself. And it's a two-way thing. And it's like two different streets essentially exist next to each other. But often you can use parking to protect one from the other as well, I think, so. No, yeah, whatever.
Well, I appreciate those comments. I know you've mentioned the two-way bike lane before, which is something we should probably do a little research on. I know there's pros and cons to that setup based on what I think it came up when we did 8th Street years ago. And I remember little details about that. I think the concern, Chris, that we've talked about here is that, well, we're not going to put bike lanes everywhere, right? There's some streets that need traffic calming that we won't put bike lanes on. And so we're trying to identify those traffic calming features that could work there.
Mhm.
And I also think there's some places that are heavily trafficked by bikes and cars that are priority corridors that bike lanes seem to be sort of a no-brainer first way to start. But I know it came up many times that in some places it might not be enough. On a Hendrick, for example, where you still have a wide stretch to speed up. I think the feeling coming out of our work group was that there needed to be more than bike lanes to slow that down. But that's just something we've talked about, and we'll see where it ends up. So, and I think, Craig, that was one of the things you said, right? That you felt that cars were still going, even with the features now, once you get past one of those, in middle of road features, they still go pretty fast.
And I think it's similar on the other side towards senior
Yeah.
housing. That's what Denise was saying. And one thing I'm wondering can we do something consider more subtle things like landscaping, along Hendrick? Cause there's like between Greystone and Ivy, for instance, it's really wide open. And there's no trees between the sidewalk and the curb. And trees, you know, they'd have environmental impacts for the better, and also they would shade people that are walking on that sidewalk, which is really cooking, you know, in the summer in the afternoon. And people coming from the park towards Greystone then aren't gonna have this clear view down there. Right now, it's sort of mowed like a interstate. So people are treat it like a highway, I think, because of that.
Okay, thanks. Hey, Kevin, I'm just thinking, I don't know when you're gonna get the traffic counters out again on Hendrick. Would there be a window in there to test what's there now and then take out like the median or the roundabout and then continue to test it with just a more continuous bike lane without those things? And just see what's happening? Or does that make sense, you think? Then we can get a more pure look at just how bike lanes are impacting traffic speeds.
Yeah, I think we could do that. It's just a matter of like when to start it.
Yeah,
Because if you start it, if we're gonna start something like that, I would just soon it be kind of a continuous, like
yeah.
1 week the way it is. They stay in the same spots. You pull one of the things out, stay for a week, pull the other thing out of the middle, and then make the bike lanes bollards anyway.
I guess I'm just thinking, and I'm open to comments on this, of course, but it seems to me one of the directions we're going in with Hendrick is bike lanes seem to be a no-brainer, with some design tweaks to manage Miners Park and all. But we're having a lot of problems with the in-road features as they exist now. And where they might make sense somewhere else, they don't make sense for Hendrick. But we still feel that without something, whether it's raised crosswalks or something, we're gonna get traffic going too fast, even with bike lanes. It'd be nice to get some data on that. That's what I'm thinking.
I think bulb outs too are still a good option, and
Bulb outs to narrow some of the, yeah,
I mean, as a possibility,
yeah.
Yeah, it kind of doesn't feel like with the roundabout. I mean, it doesn't feel like we truly tested it because, as Kevin pointed out, it wouldn't look anything like that. And the final, the permanent version wouldn't really look anything like that. It would be low, you could drive over it.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
that's
just
true
hard
too.
to.
That's true too. We haven't really gotten to test what it would really be like. Yeah.
I mean, I was also surprised, and I love your reaction, Kevin. I mean, so many people that complained said, just do raised crosswalks and speed bumps and four-way stop signs and, traffic, the police out enforcing traffic, speed limits. And so I over and over again. So I know we couldn't do a lot of those raised crosswalks because of cost. But I wonder if we factor those in, that's going to slow traffic. How do we test all these combinations?
I would encourage you all to remember, as I started out with, this is the first year. We're learning from this. There's going to be many more years of trying things out. We also have to have things that are going to work with our winter operations. Raised crosswalks do, speed bumps do not. And we've never installed a speed bump since I've been here, but there were a couple different locations in town where we had the same reaction of just put in speed bumps. We went out, put in speed bumps, and they were
Disaster.
take these things out of here within a month or 6 weeks. Because there's all sorts of unintended consequences with things like speed bumps. And it would be the same thing about a real radical dip, is anybody with anything loose in the back of their pickup, anybody who's pulling a trailer, those things create so much noise that it drives the neighbors insane.
Right.
Yeah, I think you've told us that before, and I think the recommendations we had were raised crosswalks. But I guess I raised the point because, for the first year, the first things we did, in some cases seemed pretty radical. But if we had been able to do raised crosswalks, maybe that wouldn't have seemed so radical to people. It's more within the norm of what they're used to. It almost feels like we shot ourselves in the foot by start leading off with tactical urbanism stuff that was a little radical and, looked weird. And instead of doing more crosswalks, raised crosswalks, all the easy stuff that people would recognize.
I'll just throw this out and you can take it for what it's worth in your own opinions of what it's worth. The reaction to this is not surprising to me. And you would have seen similar reactions no matter what you tried out there. And that's just experience.
Can't make everybody happy.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think that's why it's important for us to focus on the objective and how to mix and match these things and move forward, right? And to take what we've learned and move forward in a positive way without writing off the whole project, right? And as Kevin said, we're learning as we go. And I think feedback we've gotten is reasonable. I mean, not all of it, but I mean, it's confusing. And I have no sympathy for cars that have to slow down for pinch points. I think that's it. They should. But when you have 5 different things going on, it can get maybe a little more dangerous. So I think that's good. But as we move forward with this project through the rest of the summer and the fall, we get more data. I think we'll have to keep that in mind and try to and go back. And it's important, I think, on every one of these projects we undertake, go back to what we're trying to accomplish, which is make things safer for bikers, slow down traffic, and sometimes we come up with very specific things. I mean, we just may find that we go to bike lanes and it's still not enough. We'll have to do something and we'll know what not to do, right? But it's going to evolve. Kevin, before we move off to the last one, I just want to ask you budgeting because I know this is the first time and we're experimenting, but I also know that we're all anxious to see things get done. And, whether it's bike lanes or turning radii off coming off 133 or a median on, Industry Way or something, or some of these other things that were in MAP that aren't tactical urbanism. When do we have to sort of put a stake in the ground and stuff like that? And to hope that some money will be available for doing some of that work next year.
So I guess if you wanted to put together some sort of recommendation for the budget, I would try to have that done middle-ish of October. I would just remind you that we do have a couple of things that are pretty big ticket items in the budget related to crossings on 133. Just that's in.
I understood. Not our job, right? We'll tell you guys what we think you should go after and the trustees will decide what they can pay for.
Well, and I would
But we'll
be
take your
realistic.
recommendations.
Is that-
We'll take your recommendations seriously, for sure.
Yeah, right.
I mean, Kevin, it might be helpful to have some guidance from you on what is, what you think are realistic, just do it items, I mean, we don't need to test it. These are items we should just take care of, recommend to the trustees. I mean, we don't have to do it now, but I mean, to have a conversation we do at some point. What makes sense as kind of a priority for that's in the plan? Let's just do it.
I'd almost throw that back to you guys because I think some of those things are fairly easily identifiable in the plan. I would take a look at that and then say, these are the things that we'd like to do. Because my priorities may be different than yours.
Right.
Anything related to modifying radiuses at intersections, that's pretty easy to do. again, just, I mean, if we do them in concrete and people don't like them, they're gonna have to live with them, or it's gonna look pretty silly if we're out there ripping them out.
Would that even be easy to do on the places that we tested where streets run into 133, or is that gonna be a whole complicated?
That's gonna be more complicated because of the fact that they're on 133. If you notice, everything that we tried was on the town road right of way, not out on the highway. We actually contemplated doing something different at Went, but we couldn't make it work, honestly, even out in the right of way.
Okay. One more topic on the list. It's kind of related to the fact that our next meeting falls on Labor Day. And as always, there's few dates. The town calendar gets pretty booked up. So there's not a lot of time to meet. There are a couple of dates, but I don't think they're ideal. One of them is the Tuesday right after Labor Day, which, and then there was one right at the end of the month, which is practically on top of the October meeting.
29th.
Yeah. What I would like to propose is that a couple of items here that we could dig into in the rest of August and September around the work group format that we've been using. And come back in October meeting with more details on these two items, which I'll mention would be on my list. And then come back with discussion on those at the October meeting that would probably allow us to make some recommendations on what we would like to see get budgeted, which Kevin could then work with. And we're already got a group going on wayfinding. I think it would be really helpful to put a group together to dig into the map recommendations that were not tactile urbanism, like where there are bulb outs or where there are curb radii recommendations that, especially things that might overlay with our primary corridors, safe routes to schools, that we would recommend. So a group that could dig into those things, and then probably another group that could help sort of digest what's going on with the tactile urbanism, both the comments we're receiving, maybe how we might recommend using some of the features we've experimented and maybe moving into another location, or, either on a trial basis or a permanent basis, or, making recommendations for bike lanes on Hendrick, and then wait and see what we do, see how that works. So a group to work on that and sort of low hanging fruit stuff. That's what I would propose, that if we could get wayfinding in two other groups, that we would come back in October, ready to get going on those two topics. Are people comfortable with that, or do they you guys want to try to get in a meeting in September?
I think that works.
Yeah, okay, works. And I'm,
Group.
yeah.
What was the second one?
I think the first one is working on sort of map recommendations that don't fall into the category of tactical urbanism. And the second one is just working on how to digest everything that's going on with the tactical urbanism projects. I mean, I think we're going to have to, come out of this with some thoughts on what the town's experiencing on not just on Hendrick, but on the bulb outs and the turning radii. And I think it would be good to have a few people just digging into that.
What about recommendations for just do it items?
I'm sorry?
What about the just do it items?
I think that was the first thing he
That's the
was
first
talking
item. Yeah,
about.
the first item.
Okay,
Yeah.
you didn't, okay.
And so why don't we do that? Why don't we, we will not have a September meeting. Rick's already working on that. So I'll reach out to you other guys and see if we can get a couple working groups together to work on these other two issues. And those, Patrick, will include more than two people. So we'll notify you and you can post them. Okay? Any questions? Anything else?
I have one quick question for you, just so I can be thinking about this. The bulb outs that you installed on 8th Street near the cemetery, on the corner, I guess that's Village?
Mhm.
Do you know those, have they been effective? Do you have the data for that? They're subtle. They're very subtle. I'm just wondering.
I think it would be hard to judge their effectiveness simply because that's an all-way stop situation. Where you'd probably find the true measure of effectiveness is talking to pedestrians out there, and if they feel like it makes it easier to cross the road because it's not quite as far or something like that. I do know that there's tires that track across those from trailers and whatnot, but again, you have to anticipate some of that. That's why we don't have vertical curbs on those things. That's why they're drive over curbs.
I think we haven't had a chance to do a traffic count yet on 8 since the work's been done, but anecdotally, I think there's a sense that things have slowed down since that work was done.
I think that it has to a certain degree. But that, like I said, that specific intersection, it'd be really hard to chalk it up to, what's it doing? Cause it's an all-way stop situation. It'd probably be better to get out there and do some more traffic counts once we get it finished up this fall, maybe next spring, summer, and just see how that compares to some of the data we have from before the project. Cause once we should have that completely done this year. There's gonna be another mid-block bulb out on the east side. And at that one, that's where the sidewalk is actually gonna follow it instead of being in a straight line.
Okay,
Great.
okay, great. Thanks, everybody.
Can I-
What? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Kevin, yeah.
So just wanted to mention real quick, the trail from the teacher housing behind the schools over to Snowmass got overlaid last week. So
I've already had people say how they appreciate it. Yes, smooth.
Yeah, let me just say thank you, Kevin. You guys did a lot of work this this year with traffic calming features, and we're getting feedback. That's good. It's progress.
And somebody asked
Thank
me
you.
if that was a bike ped's doing, and I said, absolutely.
the other thing I was gonna mention is we did take bids on the Neeslanic Highway crossing. It'll be on the board agenda for their approval at their August 12th meeting. We got one bid, but that's okay. It was actually a really good
Oh,
bid.
good. Okay.
So we'll be recommending.
That would get done in the fall or?
That'll probably start in the middle of August.
Great.
The biggest thing to be aware of is it will require a closure or a detour of the highway, both directions. One direction will go behind City Market and the other will go down Colorado and back on 12th Street, so.
People on Catherine's Store have one more thing to be happy about. All right, thanks, everyone. Meeting's adjourned.
Going on is like, oh.